Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. Today my unfaithful wife was acting very strangely. Normally composed and meticulous, she was on edge, jumping at the slightest noise. Every hour, like clockwork, she opened an old family album and scrutinized it, her fingers tracing the edges of the photographs with a kind of reverence. Her demeanor was unsettlingly bright, a happiness I hadn't seen in her for years. Her eyes gleamed with an unsettling anticipation. She left the house around noon, leaving the album on the coffee table. Curiosity gnawed at me. Unable to resist, I walked over to the album and opened it. The scent of aged paper and faint hints of lavender perfume wafted up to me. My fingers brushed over the photos, memories of happier times and smiling faces staring back at me. But then, nestled between the pages, I found the photograph she'd been holding all morning. It showed my wife, younger, radiant, kissing a man I didn't recognize. The backdrop was a familiar place, a park not far from our house. My heart pounded as I turned the photograph over. On the back was a caption written in a hurried scrawl, "We'll meet again, I'll never forget you, I swear." Below it, in fresh ink, it read, "It will happen today at our place." Our place. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The cryptic message left little to the imagination. I knew I had to uncover the truth. I sat on the couch, gripping the photograph, my mind racing. Who was this man? Why today? And what was their place? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. My wife stepped in, a flushed excitement coloring her cheeks. She saw me with the album and froze, her smile faltering. "What are you doing with that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice cold. "Who's the man in this photo?" Her eyes darted to the photograph, then back to me. "That's none of your business," she snapped, but her bravado was thin. It's just an old friend." "An old friend you're meeting today? At your place?" I held up the photograph, the evidence glaringly damning. Her face turned pale. "You don't understand," she stammered. "It's complicated." "Make me understand," I said, stepping closer. "What's so special about today?" She took a deep breath, composing herself. "It's not what you think," she said finally. He's someone from my past. We made a promise to meet again, just once. And I suppose you were planning to tell me this, when?" I demanded. She looked away, her silence speaking volumes. My mind raced with the implications. I had to know more, but I realized I wouldn't get anything else out of her. She was locked up tight, a vault of secrets I no longer had the key to. She left the house again shortly after, her demeanor calmer but her eyes wary. As soon as the door closed behind her, I grabbed my keys and followed. I had to know where this place was. I had to see for myself. The park was only a short drive away. I parked the car and walked the familiar path, my mind replaying every detail of the photograph. The oak tree by the pond, the old bench, this was their place. I moved cautiously, my heart pounding. And then I saw them. There they were, sitting on the bench, her hand in his. The years had added lines to their faces, but the intimacy between them was undeniable. I felt like an intruder in my own life. My world was crumbling around me, the ground shifting under my feet. I watched as they talked, their heads close together, their hands intertwined. A cold, hard truth settled in my chest. I was just a plaything for my unfaithful wife. She never loved me. She used me. The rage and betrayal boiled over, darkening my vision. I knew then what I had to do. Revenge would be mine. This wasn't going to end well for her. First, I needed a plan. First, I had to gather evidence, confront her, and make her feel the betrayal she'd inflicted on me. And then, when she least expected it, I would strike. As I walked back to the car, my mind was already plotting the next steps. The game had begun, and I was determined to win. She would regret ever betraying me. I drive back home, the image of my wife and her lover haunting me. My mind is a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, a desire for vengeance. I park the car and sit there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. I need a plan. I need allies. The first person I think of is my best friend, Mike. He's always been there for me, through thick and thin. He's practical, level-headed, and fiercely loyal. I pull out my phone and dial his number. "Hey, man. What's up?" Mike answers on the second ring. "Mike, I need to talk to you. Can you come over?" "Sure thing, Dave." "You sound off. Everything okay?" "No, it's not. I'll explain when you get here." Within 20 minutes, Mike is at my door. He's a big guy, ex-military, with a no-nonsense attitude. His presence is reassuring. As he steps inside, I can see the concern etched on his face. "Spill it," he says, sitting down on the couch. I tell him everything, about the photo, the message, seeing them together. His expression darkens with each word. "Jesus, Dave. That's messed up," he says, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" "I need your help," I say. "I want to gather evidence. I want her to know I'm onto her, and I want to make her pay." Mike nods. "Okay, we'll need to be smart about this. Do you have access to her phone? Any way to track her movements?" I think for a moment. She's been using an old phone lately, but she still syncs it with her iPad. I might be able to get into it. Good. While you do that, I'll see what I can dig up on this guy she's meeting. We need to know who he is, what his deal is. We spend the next few hours in my study, working in silence. Mike taps away on his laptop, searching for information on the mystery man. Meanwhile, I manage to get into my wife's iPad. It doesn't take long before I find what I'm looking for: messages, photos, and a location-sharing app she didn't bother to hide. "Got it," I say, pointing at the screen. "She's meeting him again tomorrow. Same place." Mike looks up from his laptop. "Perfect. We'll follow her, get more evidence. But be careful, Dave. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. We need to play this smart." The next day, we stake out the park. Mike and I sit in his car, hidden behind a row of bushes, cameras ready. We watch as my wife arrives and sits on the same bench, waiting. Moments later, her lover appears. They embrace, and I feel a fresh wave of anger. "They're too comfortable," Mike mutters. "They've been doing this for a while." I nod, snapping photos with a telephoto lens. We need to confront her, but not yet. I want to catch them red-handed, in a place where they can't deny it. The day drags on. We follow them from a distance, documenting their every move. They visit a cafe, walk along the river, then finally head to a secluded house on the outskirts of town. "Looks like this is their love nest," Mike says grimly. "Let's wait and see what they do." Hours pass. Night falls. We're running on adrenaline and coffee. Finally, they emerge, looking disheveled and too intimate for just friends. They part ways, and we follow my wife home. "I'm going to confront her tonight," I tell Mike. "I need to know why." "Do it," he says. "But remember, stay calm. Get the truth out of her." I enter the house quietly. My wife is in the living room, sipping wine, lost in thought. She looks up as I walk in, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Dave, you're home late," she says, trying to sound casual. Yeah, had a lot on my mind, I reply, my voice steady. I pull out the photos and lay them on the table in front of her. Care to explain these? Her face drains of color. She reaches for the photos, her hands trembling. Dave, I can explain. Go ahead, I say, crossing my arms. I'm all ears. She looks at the photos, then back at me, tears welling in her eyes. It's not what it looks like. He was my first love. We lost touch, but we made a promise to meet again. Just once. And you thought sneaking around behind my back was the best way to keep that promise. I retort. You lied to me, betrayed me. How long has this been going on? She breaks down, sobbing. It started a few months ago. I didn't plan for it to go this far. I'm so sorry, Dave. I feel a mix of anger and pity. Sorry isn't enough. You've shattered my trust. I don't even know who you are anymore. The room falls silent, her sobs the only sound. I turn and walk out, needing space to think. Mike meets me outside, his face grim. What now? He asks. Now we plan our next move, I say, my voice cold. She's going to pay for this. They both are. As we drive away, I feel a dark resolve settle over me. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. I spend the night in a motel, unable to face the woman who has betrayed me so deeply. My mind is a hurricane of emotions, but one thing is clear, I need to expose her lies and make her pay. As dawn breaks, I make my way back home, determination solidifying my resolve. Mike is already there, waiting for me on the porch. How'd it go? He asks, concern etched on his face. She admitted to everything, I reply, pushing past him and into the house. But there's more to this. I need to find out exactly what their endgame is. Agreed, Mike says, following me inside. I've done some digging on this guy. His name is Robert Hastings. He's got a clean record, but there's something off about him. He's been lying low for years. No social media presence, minimal paper trail. I nod, my suspicions deepening. We need to find out where they're meeting next. I need to catch them in the act, with undeniable proof. Mike and I spend the day devising a plan. We install a couple of discreet cameras in the house, aiming to catch any secret communications between my wife and Robert. We also set up tracking software on her phone, giving us real-time updates on her movements. The next few days are tense. I go through the motions at work, but my mind is constantly on edge, waiting for the moment when everything will come to light. My wife, Emily, seems unaware of my suspicions, but there's a palpable tension between us. Her nervousness grows with each passing day. One evening, as she steps out for her usual walk, I get a notification from the tracking app. She's heading towards the park again. I signal to Mike, and we follow her from a safe distance. Sure enough, she meets Robert at their usual spot. This time, though, there's something different about their interaction. They seem more urgent, almost desperate. They're planning something, Mike mutters. We need to get closer. We inch our way towards them, keeping to the shadows. As we get within earshot, we can make out snippets of their conversation. I can't keep doing this, Robert, Emily says, her voice shaky. It's too risky. Just a little longer, Robert replies, his tone soothing. Once we have the money, we'll disappear. No one will ever find us. My heart pounds in my chest. Money? Disappear? What the hell is going on? Suddenly, Emily looks around, her eyes wide. Did you hear that? Mike and I freeze, holding our breath. But after a moment, she seems to relax. I'm just paranoid, she mutters. We need to move soon, Robert says. He's getting suspicious. I can feel it. I know, Emily replies, her voice filled with dread. But I can't just leave him with nothing. He'll come after us. Not if we play this right, Robert says, taking her hand. Trust me, Emily. We'll make it work. Mike and I exchange glances. We need to act, and fast. We retreat back to the car, our minds racing with the implications of what we've just heard. They're planning to rob you and run, Mike says, his jaw clenched. We need to stop them before they can put their plan into action. Back at the house, I confront Emily as soon as she walks through the door. We need to talk, I say, my voice cold and unyielding. She looks startled, her eyes flicking to the hidden cameras. About what? About your little plan with Robert, I say, throwing the photos and recordings we've gathered onto the table. I know everything. Her face goes pale. Dave, I can explain. Explain? I interrupt, my voice rising. You were going to steal from me and run off with that bastard. How could you? Tears well up in her eyes. It's not like that, Dave. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I shout, slamming my fist on the table. Tell me the truth, for once. She collapses into a chair, sobbing. It was never supposed to go this far. Robert and I reconnected a few months ago, and he convinced me that we could have a life together. He said we needed money to start over, and you thought stealing from me was the solution? I ask, my voice filled with disbelief. He said it would be easy, she whispers. That you wouldn't even notice until we were gone. I'm so sorry, Dave. I never meant for it to hurt you like this. Mike steps forward, his expression hard. Sorry isn't good enough. You're going to tell us everything, every detail of your plan, and then we're going to the police. She looks at me, pleading. Please, Dave. Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end it with Robert. We can go back to the way things were. There's no going back, I say, my voice cold. You made your choice. Now you face the consequences. As we drive to the police station, Emily's sobs fill the car. My mind is a maelstrom of emotions, but I know one thing for certain, this is far from over. Robert won't give up easily, and neither will I. The game is still on, and I intend to win. The ride to the police station feels like an eternity. Emily's sobs grow quieter, replaced by a sullen silence. Mike keeps his eyes on the road, his jaw set in grim determination. We reach the station, and as we step inside, I'm filled with a sense of finality. This is it. This is where the truth comes out. Detective Sarah Collins greets us. She's an old friend of Mike's from his military days, and we've decided to trust her with this case. She leads us to a small, dimly lit interrogation room. Emily sits down, her hands trembling, while Mike and I stand behind her. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Detective Collins, Sarah says, her voice steady and professional. I understand you have information regarding a planned theft and an accomplice. Emily looks up, her eyes red and swollen. Yes, she whispers. I'll tell you everything. As Emily recounts her relationship with Robert, his promises of a new life, and their plan to steal from me, Sarah takes notes, her expression unreadable. But something in Emily's story doesn't sit right with me. There's a missing piece, a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of her words. So, Robert approached you after all these years and convinced you to steal from your husband? Sarah asks, her pen poised above her notepad. Yes, Emily replies, her voice barely audible. He said it was the only way we could be together. Did he ever mention why he needed the money so badly? Sarah presses. Emily shakes her head. He just said it was for our future. Sarah nods, closing her notebook. Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. We'll need to bring Mr. Hastings in for questioning. Can you tell us where we can find him? Emily gives her the address of the house they've been using. As Sarah leaves the room to coordinate the arrest, Mike turns to me. Something's off, Dave. She's not telling us everything. I know, I say, my mind racing. But what? What is she hiding? We don't have to wait long. Within an hour, Sarah returns, a grim expression on her face. We picked up Robert Hastings. He's being processed now. But there's something you need to see. She leads us to another room, where Robert sits, handcuffed to a table. His eyes meet mine, and a cold smile spreads across his face. Ah, David. So good to finally meet you. What the hell is going on? I demand. Why did you do this? Robert chuckles. It's simple, really. Revenge. Revenge? I echo, bewildered. Yes. You see, your dear wife wasn't entirely truthful, Robert says, leaning forward. This isn't about love or money. This is about payback. For what? I ask, my patience wearing thin. Robert's eyes flash with anger. Your father. My heart skips a beat. What does my father have to do with this? He ruined my family, Robert hisses. Years ago, your father swindled my parents out of their life savings. They lost everything. My mother died of a heart attack from the stress, and my father drank himself to death. I swore I'd make your family pay. I'm stunned. My father was a shrewd businessman, but I never knew he'd done something like that. So you used Emily to get to me? Precisely, Robert says, a twisted smile on his face. It was the perfect plan. She was desperate for excitement, for something more than her mundane life. It was easy to manipulate her. Emily sobs quietly, her guilt and shame evident. I didn't know, Dave. I swear I didn't know. But Robert isn't finished. I knew once you found out, you'd come after me. And here we are, right where I wanted you. Sarah steps forward, her expression hard. Mr. Hastings, you've just admitted to conspiracy and manipulation. This is over. Robert laughs, a hollow, bitter sound. Oh, it's far from over, detective. You see, I have friends. Powerful friends who won't take kindly to my arrest. Mike and I exchange a worried glance. What do you mean? Mike asks. Robert's smile widens. You'll find out soon enough. The next few days are a blur. Emily is taken into protective custody, and I'm left to piece together the wreckage of my life. Robert's words haunt me. Who are his friends? How far does this conspiracy go? One evening, as I'm sitting in the living room, my phone rings. It's Sarah. David, we need to talk. Can you come down to the station? When I arrive, she leads me to her office. We've been digging into Robert's background, she says, closing the door behind us. And we found something interesting. He wasn't acting alone. What do you mean? I ask, my heart pounding. He's connected to a larger criminal network, Sarah explains. They specialize in high-stakes scams and extortion. Robert was just the tip of the iceberg. Jesus, I mutter, sinking into a chair. So what now? We're working on dismantling the network, she says. But you need to be careful. Until we have everyone involved in custody, you and Emily could still be targets. I nod, the gravity of the situation settling over me. Thank you, Sarah. For everything. As I leave the station, I realize that this isn't the ending I expected. The intrigue, the betrayal, and the layers of deception run deeper than I ever imagined. Emily and I have a long road ahead of us, but we'll face it together. Back at the house, I find Emily in the kitchen, staring out the window. She turns as I enter, her eyes filled with remorse. "Dave, I'm so sorry." "I know," I say, pulling her into a hug. "We'll get through this. Together." And as we stand there, holding on to each other, I realize that while the scars of betrayal will take time to heal, the truth has set us free. And in that freedom, we'll find a way to rebuild.